Curiosity is infinite and judgment is finite.
Yeah. Patrick, it's good to catch up again for our third episode of season 2 of PM Talks.
Wow.
I know,
wow.
right? Yeah, we're recording this ahead of the curve. Like we are we are time travelers. Well, we're all time travelers, really, aren't we? I mean, if you want to get really curious about it, you can dive into the depths of like multiple infinities and stuff. But one of the things that I wanted to touch on as we dive into the topic of curiosity is like the paradoxical quotes that you hear around it. Like you hear curiosity killed the cat, but then you've got be curious, not judgmental, or stay curious, which are two very opposing ideas. And I think that I wonder if we are heading into an era of more curiosity and less judgment, or are we like, is there a real battle going on there right now? Do you think? I feel that there's a real pull towards getting back to curiosity, and there's this real pull to try to keep us from doing that or keep people from doing that.
Yeah. Well, and I think, obviously, we are divided by country.
An invisible is really just an invisible arbitrary line, from what I've heard.
An invisible arbitrary line. Well, from what I've heard, Canada might be interested in buying a few of our states here. That's what I heard.
I sent you that video. That was pretty funny. The TikTok video, which by the time you listen to this, you may not be able to access. So
Minnesotans, at least those of us in the metro areas, have been begging for Canada to just purchase and incorporate us for such a long time.
We would be unstoppable in hockey if that was the case.
Well, that is true. That is true. I mean, that is the major benefit of purchasing Minnesota for Canadians, is that you would get a real hockey culture, with a long tradition of hockey. In any case, we're going way off.
No. But actually, it's interesting. So when those kind of things popped up in my feed, and believe me, we're both hearing it as we're recording this, right? Like we are, just for those that are joining us, we are we're like a few days away from an administrative change in the United States when it comes to, and if you could see Patrick's face right now, he is not a fan of the administration that's taking over. I want to be very careful, because I know that there's a cult.
I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of the last one.
No, that
is better.
That's just it.
So
around that, you see all those stories coming out, and this is where attention comes in, which we've talked about multiple times. And so all of a sudden you're going down this rabbit hole, getting curious about what all is going on so that you can maybe pass judgment or have some judgment around it. And I find, like, once I got to a certain point in that kind of diversion, because that's really what it was, I took a hard stop and said, and I was talking to my friend Eric Fisher about this too. I took a stop and said, what is this? This isn't serving me. I got curious about why I was digging in as opposed to what I was digging into. And I'm like, I gotta, because I can't do that for, and for those that say for the next 4 years. No, this is in perpetuity. The attention stuff is in perpetuity. So whether it's the next 4 years, the next, whatever. So I had to kind of pull back and go, okay, that's where the judgment came in, where I'm like, all right, what do I need to do here? But the curiosity is where it begat it. Yeah.
I think I strongly believe that we this is a very generalized statement, take it for what it's worth, but I think that there has been a long running war on curiosity that has been going on for quite some time. Because quite frankly, it is a lot easier to manage people in a company, manage your kind of day-to-day life. It's a lot easier to govern people if they don't ask questions.
Right.
If they don't question, the status quo, and quite frankly, our lives as quote unquote knowledge workers, as you know, are a lot easier if we just don't question, what and we need to do, and don't investigate the why, and we just go ahead and do it. Right.
Yeah.
It works better for everybody. It works better in a capitalist system for sure. If your employees just, do what they're told, right? And do what they're asked to do. And I give you this stack of work, and I tell you it needs to get done by X time. And you don't ask questions, you just do the work.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to stop and ask questions. That just takes time and efficiency away. Just get it done. Here's this stack of widgets, right? So all of this is to say that I think that we have designed a system that, for the most part, not only rewards lack of curiosity, or is built on lack of curiosity, but that on the flip side of it, champions innovation, which comes from curiosity.
Of course.
Right? Champions, but we don't want, we want that to be rare, right? We want Steve Jobs to innovate, but we want the, 30,000 Foxconn workers currently building iPads to not be curious, to just show up, put the widget in the thing, don't ask questions, right?
Yep.
And I think that is largely what how power is managed and brokered, not just at the corporate level, but increasingly at the government level, the societal level as well, right?
Yeah.
Don't question, why we have self-checkouts instead of cashiers, right? Yeah, sure, you can form your own idea, but and we can give you some bullshit answer that, excuse my French,
no,
but you get what I'm saying,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That we don't even want our customers to question. We don't want them to question, why the burger is $17 when I can get one for $5 from McDonald's. If that, if that, right? If that,
the $5 hamburger is drifting away into the it is so funny when I talk to my kids and show them, and I'm sure with Beatrix you have the same thing, where it's like, here's the McDonald's menu in the 90s, and remember, our parents did that to us too. Like, it was 25 cents for a pack of carbs. We're like, what? And then it's like $1 for us, and now for them it's $5. I wonder if
I do it with some things, not with McDonald's.
No.
Has never had McDonald's.
As you're talking about this, I wrote down like on a sticky note, curiosity and judgment on each side, and then I put trust in the middle.
Oh yeah, well, because that's really, if you want to get down to one of the biggest problems with what's going on right now, not just the United States,
in general,
Canada. I mean, Trudeau just stepped down because of a lack of trust in his leadership, right? So I mean, trust is the glue that holds society together. Trust, money operates on trust, right? Trade operates on trust.
It's likely, so
operates on trust. Everything operates on trust. And if you start to lose trust, if you start to erode trust, society begins to break down.
And I think what happens is, first off, a good example of the currency thing is blockchain and Bitcoin and all that stuff, right? Like,
sure.
People are like, I don't trust it because they can't see it, taste it, touch it. There's a lot of people that have, and it's not regulated. Like, there's a whole bunch.
I'm one of those people.
I don't know enough about it. So again, I'm trying not to come from a place of judgment on it, but because I don't trust it, it is far easier for me to go to judgment than to be curious.
That's judgment.
And that's exactly what happens is, and so it's by the same token, when we go into the world that I live in and that you occupy too, the idea of, when I say break a project down, into like its smallest pieces. Why do I recommend people do that? Why do I encourage it? Because it will allow you to trust that you are getting every step of it. If you quickly, and the curiosity part is digging in. The Richard Feynman quote that comes to mind is, nearly everything is interesting if you dig deep enough. And I'm paraphrasing. But the point is that when you are breaking apart a project, there has to be curiosity involved, because you're like, well, you're asking questions and such. If you just say, I don't need to break it down, I know what I'm doing here, et cetera, that trust, number one, may be misplaced, because there's going to be some variables that you may not have taken into account because you didn't break it down. But also, you are passing judgment not just on your capabilities without necessarily taking into account all the unknown factors, but you're also placing trust in the fact that the project will take care of itself, as opposed to you taking care of it. And the only way, and frankly, this is why I'm very curious about this proposed Department of Government Efficiency. I have a sense of what it would look like. I mean, it's really tricky for me to, and again, I'm Canadian, so I'm living kind of outside of that bubble, so to speak. But for me, it's very, I have a hard time reconciling that the people that will be running it and their initiatives that they're discussing tells me that they know what efficiency actually is, right?
Yeah.
Versus, so I'm on that precipice of judgment, but I can't pass judgment until, number one, the department actually exists. Number two, I see what actually is going to happen. And even then, when I judge it, I would be judging it from an outside perspective, which is what happens. So example, when I do weigh in on political conversations in the United States, what do you think the first thing people say to me is if they know where I'm from?
Oh, what do you know about it? You're not from here.
Yeah. Now, my immediate reaction could be, I probably know more about it than you do. Because a lot of people don't, I mean, and that would be my instant reaction. Because in many cases that I've come across, I have, and I do, because, I'm looking at it and I have an objective point of view on it.
Exactly. And
right?
non-emotional, it doesn't affect you.
Exactly.
What difference does it make?
But when we had the issues in Ottawa, when the convoy was there, I saw so many people not from Canada passing judgment and saying, oh, look, Canada's turning into the next China. Canada's doing this. And I'm like, you don't even you don't know what's going on 100, because I live in a provincial capital too, as you live in a state capital, right? So,
you're right.
I could go downtown and see what was actually going on. I'm like, this is a disorganized mess. It's nothing. I mean, I'm not 100% on board. I'm not 100% on board with any of that. But my point is that when you are, so I was able to say, hey, this is not really what's happening. And then this is where I had to hope. And for some people, I knew immediately that they weren't curious. They were ready to say they were emotionally invested in whatever they were. So it wouldn't matter.
Right. Exactly.
But there was one person in particular who was he was from New Zealand, I think, or anyway, not from America. And I said, here's a story about what's really going on. And I sent him not a story from Canada's News and not a story. I sent it from like a third party. And I said, this is a more accurate representation of what's going on, because in Canada, not unlike the United States or other places, news organizations have, kind of leaned in one direction or the other. So you're going to get the story that skews the way that they want that audience, like anything else, right? Unfortunately, it's happening to news. But my point is that when it comes to, it is so easy to go to judgment because it doesn't involve trust, and it kind of puts curiosity in the back seat if it's even in the vehicle with you.
Yes. Well, and also, it allows one to write off anything that might challenge or disagree with the judgment, right? Curiosity is infinite and judgment is finite.
Yeah. because you have to go, because you have to go back to curious. If you decide, if you are either proven wrong or maybe have second thoughts about your judgment, where do you immediately have to go back to? Curiosity.
Curiosity. Right. Exactly. Right. And, and so, judgment allows me to decide how I feel about something or think about something, make that decision final, and move along to other things.
Yep.
And anything else that comes up about that, well, yeah, I've already decided. I've already made the choice. I don't have to think about that, right?
Yep.
And I can very easily just say, yep, nope, this is my choice. Yep, nope, this is what's happening, right? I don't have to work anymore. I can go do other things. And sometimes that's awfully convenient, right? I would argue that it's probably correct, right? There are certain things that I don't necessarily need to know, right?
Yep.
I don't necessarily need to be curious about, and I can have enough of an idea and enough of an opinion on it that I can easily, pass judgment. It's not affecting anyone. It's not hurting anyone. I'm not, defaming anyone or objectifying them or pressing them in it's done. And we, actually, need some of those sensible defaults, right? I mean, the truth of the matter is, like I said, money's built on trust, right? If I was consistently curious about the fact that we don't have enough gold, for instance, to back this dollar, and then if I start to think, well, gosh, who decided gold was the thing? Why can't it be something else? Oh, and if I start to really think about okay, but hold on a second. What makes gold valuable in the first place? It's just a bunch of us deciding that gold was pretty and shiny and thus valuable. Why? Who decided that? I don't know, 5,000, 6,000, maybe 10,000 years ago. I could go on forever.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're like, dude, you gonna pay for the hot dog or what?
Yeah.
Right. And so I guess what I'm saying is that some things we can safely be not curious about. They're not going to affect things. We can all just decide and agree that, hey, that dollar's worth $1. And if I give you $1, you'll be able to get something else that's worth $1 to you. And everybody is happy. Because guess what? That's how the entire economy of every monetary system ever invented, known to man, and existing in the world today works. That's just how we've all decided to do it as human beings. And quite frankly, $1 bill is easier than chickens and cows to carry around in our pockets. And so we can just make judgment about that. And that's the way it is and not get curious about it, right? But there are other things that we need to always keep the door to curiosity open for, right? We should always keep the door to curiosity open for, I would say, especially things that we disagree with, right?
Right.
Because what we see happening in the world today, and especially in this country, is my closest frame of reference, is this breakdown in trust. And like I said, trust is the glue that holds society together. And I just automatically, because you're wearing a MAGA hat, decide that, you know what? I hate that person. He's a bad person. I'm not going to trust that person.
Yeah.
Right? Well, what if that person is an EMT and what if I'm injured?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
the depth of
I still gonna?
Yeah, the depth of that. Because I mean, again, you could see somebody walking around wearing a New York Rangers baseball cap, and you're not going to
whatever, or Black Lives Matter T-shirt.
Well, but my point is that those emblems, those create again, either a path to curiosity or a path to judgment. And in
Mhm.
theory, it should go through curiosity first. But to your point, it's a lot easier, especially because,
Yeah.
it's just more efficient, for lack of a better term, to go, oh, well, you wear this, therefore you're this, 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 and this. It'd be like somebody seeing me
Mhm.
wearing a Bengals hat and going, oh, this guy must be from Cincinnati. No,
Yeah. No.
nope.
And yeah, and once
And then they
again,
go,
we
why? Well,
do.
why do you have a Bengals hat? They're like, well, and then,
There's the curiosity.
yeah.
Yeah. And now they've learned something about you, and now they've heard a cute story about tigers,
It,
and
and why I was fascinated. And that story then goes, oh, so visual things. Yes, and that's why I'm a fan of this team. And then it leads down a conversation where you're like, okay, not only is this guy not from Cincinnati, he also, all his sports teams are not affiliated with his hometown at all, let alone his home country. So what does that say? And you could easily,
well, and
yeah, like people
and
could say, oh, well, that means he's, how does he reconcile being a Canadian, but he's a fan of all these American teams? Well, because I like the way those teams perform. And, in the case of hockey, in most cases, I used to be able to say, they're mostly Canadians anyway.
well, this is true. Canadians are Minnesotans.
Yeah.
But the other part of it too is like, um, the other day, you posted on Instagram you were wearing a hat.
Yeah, the
I think it was
Hartford,
Instagram. Maybe it was Blue Sky.
a Hartford Whalers hat. Yeah.
The Hartford Whalers hat. Are the Hartford Whalers still a thing?
No, they are in Carolina
I've
now. They moved to Carolina.
Okay.
But
I watched the Hartford Whalers when I was a teenager growing up. I went to quite a few Whalers games.
and I will put a link in the show notes to the Hartford Whalers goal song, because that song is still like iconic. In fact, when Carolina, so this is a good example of, again, kind of this judgment piece. So my assistant Sarah lives in the Carolinas, and so they've
Okay.
gone to Hurricanes games, and whenever the Whalers play, like, they will do retro nights. Well, their retro nights is wearing Hartford Whalers jerseys. That is a point of pain. You can find on social, every time the Whalers jerseys are being worn by the Hurricanes, people from Connecticut and Hartford specifically are like, oh, it's just salt in the wound. Like, because they didn't want to lose their team.
Moved, yeah.
But why was I wearing the hat? Well, first off, Sarah gave it to me as a gift, which I was like, she knew I liked the logo because that logo of the Hartford Whalers is one of them.
It's an awesome logo.
It's incredibly
it's
iconic.
iconic.
To the point where the women's professional hockey league, their team, the Boston Fleet, if you look at that uniform, it's kind of the Hartford Whalers logo turned on its side to be a B. So it's, what is it? They're following Austin Kleon's stealing like an artist kind of idea, right? So, but I want to jump into something, because we've talked about, judgment and curiosity, specifically in relation to things that we may not know enough about, right? Like, so you and I are both night owls. One of the things that hence why we call it PM Talks, because it's Patrick and Mike, but also we're both better in the later part of the afternoon and evening specifically. I was watching a video, and I'll see if I can find it, from Mel Robbins, who, you've the 5-second rule, a new book out called The Let Them Theory. And
yes.
And there's lots of
some folks in my life who have been going nuts about
yes.
this book.
And by the way, I've heard great things about it. So that aside, I'm not judging the book, but what I will say is, this is a short TikTok video, but I think it'll probably be on another platform as well. So I'll find it and share it in the show notes. But she said, if you're not getting up early in the day, she was very absolute about it. Like, you're losing out. Like, you need to, and immediately, because I'm so viscerally connected, and I've done plenty of research on this, as you know, my immediate I know I didn't have to stop at curiosity. I didn't go to judgment. I didn't go, well, Mel Robbins says that, I'm going to disavow everything else she said because of this. And that is where, and we touched on this, that's where the danger is. But I'm also, but I also know that with judgment and curiosity, the companion piece to that isn't the subject matter that they're talking about, the area. It's also, I need to convince this person that they're not right. And that's something I've gotten better about not doing, but that was my instant mental thing. Like, well, she doesn't know about this and this and this and this, or she does and doesn't care to share that because you're swimming upstream when you're trying to say it's okay to be a night owl.
Well, and it's this other point too, right? Which is judgment meets judgment. It leads to, judgment on one side leads to judgment on the other.
Right.
And like with the guy in the MAGA hat, if I decide that this is what I think of him, he's going to probably go, well, this is what I think of you. Like, it's going to be this hard wall that gets built immediately between us, right?
Yep.
Whereas if I am curious about that guy, and this relates to the absolutist statements like, if you're not doing this, you're missing out, or you're a bad person, or you're not doing it right,
Yep.
That lead to, for instance, you saying, well, if that's what you think about, morning people versus night owls, and I'm a night owl, well, I know what you think of me, and if you have that kind of feeling about that, I'm gonna question everything else you say, right?
Yeah.
And it's and once again, it's gonna be this judgment meets judgment.
Yep.
And I would argue that the converse of that is true. Curiosity meets curiosity, right?
Yep.
If I were to ask MAGA guy, like, why is that? Give me, what are some of your concerns? What are some of the things that lead you to believe that somehow we are less than what we were as a country, and that, this path is going to make it better, right?
Right.
And I might learn, like, some of his concerns, and I might even agree with some of them and have some genuine shared concerns. And then I might say, well, but here's where I differ, and here's where I think about this, right? And he might go, I hadn't thought of it that way before. That's interesting. Well, what about, and now we have a dialogue.
Yes.
Right?
And it's civil.
Because
it's civil too.
It's civil. And because we have a dialogue, we are building trust.
Right.
Because I am removing judgment from it, right? And he's removing judgment. And because I'm curious, he's becoming curious, and vice versa. And we may not walk away having changed our initial positions at all, but it doesn't matter. I now have a better understanding. I'm not just writing him off. I'm not thinking that he's following that path because he's somehow some closet mean person, right? Or, even, obvious mean person.
Yeah.
And he will walk away saying, hey, all those libtards aren't so bad. I mean, it's just like, that there's potential there, right? In the same way that, by opening yourself up to the idea that, hey, morning, that works for you. Yeah, I get that, but you need to understand that, like, it doesn't necessarily work for everybody, and that some people change as they get, like, when they're young, they're night owls.
Yep.
But as they get older, their time clock changes. My dad we had a conversation this morning about how his sleep cycle is such because of his age. And this is very common for older individuals, that he's up for a good part of the night and then goes to sleep for about 2 hours, and then he's back up again, and he's working and doing his thing. And then by like 9 a.m. in the morning, he's back in bed for another 2 to 3 hours, and then he's up again. And then by, say, 3 or 4, he's down. Like, so he is getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep a day.
Yeah.
But it's not coming all at once, and it's all over the place. And that time clock works now. And it was never that way when he was young, right? When he was young, it was more, he was a morning guy, and he was like, get up at 4 and because he grew up partly part of his life growing up was on a farm, and so that's when folks got up and got the cows milked and got let the chickens out and the whole 9 yards, right? Got all the chores done so that by the time you're having breakfast, you've already done half your work for the day, right?
Yep.
I'm just saying that even morning people become night owls. Night owls become morning people, that this stuff is not black and white. It can be fluid. It can go all over. It can be situational, and that there is no judgment on one thing or the other. The question is, are you happy? And if the answer is yes, then sleep whenever the heck you want. It doesn't matter, right? So, all of this is to say that I think we are, and I would almost argue, are increasingly being coached to be, programmed to be less curious and more judgmental.
Right.
And we need to actively work against that. We need to actively fight that, not just for our own growth and our own learning and our own expansion, heart expansion, but also to combat the breakdown of society, because that's exactly where it begins. When you erode trust, you erode the glue that holds society together. And when that glue is gone, is when you have collapse, is when you have chaos. It's really that plain and simple. You can look at every fallen empire and you will find exactly that path. It happened in Rome.
Yeah.
Since we men like to talk about Rome all the time.
The Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't go for more than a half hour apparently without bringing up or thinking about the Roman Empire. But there's a good reason for it, right? Because it is just a textbook example of how a small society can become a big society. That big society can become a great society. That great society can become can come to dominate the world, and it can shrink back down again and disappear. And all of that, every step of the way, was about the breakdown in trust and where judgment overtook curiosity.
So I want to go into something that's near and dear to my heart, and I know you appreciate it too. And I think this is one way that we can kind of combat this assault on, let's just accept things rather than be aware. Let's take it as face value as opposed to being curious about it. And that is journaling. I think that so part of the problem with the internet is great for the most part. There are parts of it that are not great or can end up not being great depending on how we interact with it. And so when you look at social media apps, and there's that documentary on Netflix, I think that kind of goes into the idea of what social media is doing to you. I'll see if I can find the link to it and put it in the show notes. I can't remember the title offhand, but the idea of with social, what you're doing is there's an echo chamber depending on who you surround yourself with, right? And depending on what you've got. And also there is this, some people have no problem and no filter putting whatever they want on social media, which, fine. Again, not really judging. I'm curious as to why that would be something you'd want to do when a journal kind of gives you the space to do that stuff with less, quote, repercussions. It'd be like, and when things are on social, you're journaling for the whole world, right? So anything you say could technically be turned against you. That's where, for lack of, like, cancel culture can take hold. And in some cases, it's absolutely, again, there's no right or wrong here. There's no black or white. Like, cancel culture is neither good nor bad. It is what it is, right? So I wonder how you would get or encourage people to say, look, if you want to cultivate curiosity, the best place to start, as far as I'm concerned, is number one, internally. And also, in a journal where you actually can reflect upon it and you get a fairly tolerant representation of how you're feeling in those moments with those entries, if you're truly being authentic and curious. And
Mm.
there will likely be judgments on yourself and others mattered throughout there, but they're kind of a safer space for them to be initially. I would just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Hmm. Um, so I think that well, yes, that is true, right? I I don't know. I think pen and paper, pencil and paper, whatever, um, is an especially good place to work out how you think and what and what you're thinking about and why. It's a great way to talk to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes
It's
sense, right?
therapeutic.
Right, sure. It's therapeutic. And I know for myself, there have certainly been things that I actually have for a while it was a file on my or a folder on my computer. But I've also used various journal entries
Mm-hmm.
this way. But the folder on my computer was called Letters Never Sent,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And they were letters that I wrote to people. Sometimes they were angry.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they were nice. Oftentimes, if I had a crush or if if there's something I wanted to say to somebody that I would never really tell them, but that but I needed to get it off my chest, I would write it out and put it in that folder. I still have that folder. I could go back through and read through it
Mm-hmm.
and tell you some of these things that I wanted to say, right?
Right.
You know, yeah, I'm giving a random example of it was a coworker who we were friends outside of work as well. This is like 25, 30 years ago now. No,
Right.
longer than that. And she came over, I made dinner, we were hanging out, and she started to basically say, well, what I thought she was going to say, she stopped herself from saying.
Right.
Um, and I think she stopped herself from saying because, she knew that I was not available, right? And that what she wanted to say was, if it wasn't for the fact that you were with, I would,
Yeah.
yeah, she wanted to admit her,
Sure.
her crush. Um, and she started to, and then she stopped herself and she's like, oh, I forgot what I was going to say, and just
Right.
let it drift off. And I let it drift off. Like, I didn't call her back. I just let it
Right.
drift off. And so I wrote a letter saying, hey, I let this drift off because, and and I know that and that I
Mm-hmm.
know that that this would have been a problem, but
Yep.
just know that if it wasn't a problem, that the feeling would have been mutual and we could have gone there, right? Um, Never would have said that to her in person,
No. And
right? For any number of reasons. And so I let it go, right? And the way I let it go was I wrote it down.
yeah.
And I wrote it down. So basically, it's one of those things where, like, you write these things down and you burn them in the fire, and
I was just going to say, because I just did a webinar and it's like people were concerned about journal. Like, what happens? I'm like, write in your journal, like, write a book, use a physical book, whether it's, once your book is full, or let's say use it for an entire year, and then burn it. Like,
Yeah,
read it and burn it. Like,
Yep.
refamiliarize yourself with it. And as we were talking about this, because you just alluded to it, like letting go of your curiosity at some point, you said was important. And in this case, letting go of judgments. Like, so there is a letting go component, and some of the most cathartic letting go you can do is this idea of either digitally burning it or like, just that can be an example. And I wrote down the judgment journal. Like, what if you literally had some prompts that would go, what am I judgmental about? And just, either keep it for an extended period of time, or just do it in one single session, and then and then find a fire, burn it or shred it, or do something with, or drown it, or whatever you need to do.
Some sort of ritual that says,
yes,
I am ready to let go of these things. I am ready to stop letting these things stop me from growing. Right?
Yes,
because curiosity is what makes us grow. And the moment we pass judgment, we start growing on those particular topics, or that particular person, or those particular things.
Yeah.
Right?
And you build a book of curiosities instead. And even then, you could go, okay, I'm not curious about this anymore. You rip out the page and burn it. Or you rip out the page, or you leave it there in the event that, like, so a great example is, for me at least, is my son is now getting back into music. Like, he's getting into music. He bought an electric guitar for Christmas. And so we're 3 months into that process now, and he's getting good. Like, and he's very much not I'm going to take guitar lessons. He's like, I want to learn this song. And then he learns it, and he practices it and practices it. And the other, sometime in January, so not too long before we recorded this, my Sean Blanc, a mutual friend of ours, put on, I think it was Sean said, like, he posted to X, post a picture of yourself from another era. And it was a thread, a chain that was going around. And I went into, we happened to, because we were just getting our living room we had painted over the holidays, and we're putting things back. I'm like, oh, there's the photo albums. And I went through an old photo album, and I have a photo of me at either 12 or 13 playing the electric guitar, because I have played guitar. And I was like, this is me from another era. But because my son is getting back into it, and he knows I like music, and I'm getting back into it. So I have not bought a guitar yet, done any of that. And as a matter of fact, part of me saying maybe I should, part of me's like, well, maybe I should learn keyboard, because he could play guitar and I could play and so all of that sits there waiting. And I think that the thing about judgment doesn't wait, curiosity can, I think. You know what I mean? Like, a judgment, you may say, I'm reserving judgment, but you're already most of the way there.
You're there, right? Yeah.
But if you're like, I'm curious about this,
past it.
I'm curious about this for now, and that's where the someday maybe list kind of in GTD parlance would exist. Or,
sure.
And you can let go of curiosities, but you never know. And by the way, you never know, number one, if it'll come back while you still have record of it, or it can come back to you and you had no, like, I would never have anticipated my son's like, I want to learn how to play electric. Like, that just wasn't on my bingo card at all for him. But now that it is, he's like he's building a guitar. By the time you're listening to this, he probably will have built a guitar, because he's in woodshop class. He's going to build his own Telecaster knockoff, right?
That's awesome.
I'm like, that
is so great.
And so he's going so far into that. And because we're both talking about going to the OK Go concert when they come to Vancouver, and so there's something, I think your kids or people that you were associating with can bring out those curiosities in you that either were from a long bygone era, or maybe were things that you didn't feel you could really fully explore, and you just needed someone else to go with you.
Yeah. Gosh, we could do a whole episode on the ways in which our kids become us, and then reflect back who we are. just a very recent example. This is kind
Uh-huh.
of somewhat off the beaten topic here. But Beatrix, uh, after I picked her up the other night from circus. She was like,
Uh-huh.
"Hey, can we go to Target?" And I'm like, "Sure, yeah. What do you need at Target?" She's like, "Well, I need this, that, and the other, and plus, I wanted to get a gift for my friend who's having a hard time. Just a small little, some candy or something that she would like." And I'm like, "Okay, and I'm like, so she said, yeah, she's been having a hard time, and I kind of, I noticed it today, and I said to her, "Hey, I've noticed that, you seems like you've been having a hard time lately." And she's like, "Oh, thanks for noticing. I don't think anyone, else has really noticed, and I appreciate you seeing it." And I thought to myself, I said, "Well, hmm, you know who that's like? The whole getting the gift thing for
Uh-huh.
the person who's having a hard time." And she's like, "Mom?" I'm like, "Yeah, Mom does that stuff all the time." you know and
Uh-huh.
and then she goes, "Yeah, I don't know, it wasn't anything that I knew about happening to her or saw happening to her. I could just feel that something was off and that she was having a hard time. I could just feel that. I'm empathetic that way." I said, "Oh, well, you know where you get that from."
Yeah. Yeah.
She goes, "You?" I said, "Uh-huh." you know and so I brought this up to Bethany, and Bethany, my wife,
Uh-huh.
and Bethany was like, I don't do that. When do I do that? I said, "You just did it last week. You literally like baked cookies and brought some over for somebody who was having a hard day." She, "Oh, yeah, I guess I do." Like, she didn't even realize that
No, it's second nature.
that's it's so, yeah, second nature for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I mean, the truth of the matter is that, our you know, gosh, if you have kids, this this isn't a nature versus nurture thing.
No.
You know, I'm sure that it is both, right?
Uh-huh.
That both Beatrix has a empathetic, caring, compassionate bent
Right.
that is genetic, that she inherited from us, right?
Uh-huh.
But also, I'm sure that she has noticed, even subconsciously, over the years of my wife
Yep.
doing nice things for people just because they are having a hard day, or they're having a rough day, or they didn't get that promotion that they were hoping for, or they didn't get that grant they were supposed to get, and she will bring over a small little gift for them of some sort. And and almost always has stuff on hand for exactly that reason, right?
Right.
A little candle she picked up in the dollar section at Target, or you know the
Yep.
or something like that she will buy without having any plans or use for, and stick aside,
Just
and be like, "Oh, okay, here, let me give him this."
yep. Yep.
uh and so, yeah, then this has nothing to do with necessarily creativity or
Well, it kind of does, because as you're talking
okay.
about this, there's this book called Tracking Wonder, Reclaiming a Life of Meaning and Possibility in a World Obsessed with, oh, thanks Amazon for the show, with productivity, actually, of all things. Jeffrey Davis wrote
Mm,
it. And so
okay.
as you were talking about this idea of wonder, because wonder, we're both word nerds. The term wonder means
Mm,
like the idea of
mm,
wonder, and then like, I wonder,
mhm,
right? And so
mhm, mhm,
I mean,
mhm.
if you're looking at the video, you can see this, but I kind of wrote this thing. It might be harder to track. Let me see if I can get it to come in. But it says wonder. I've got like a cycle here, and this is just like a rough draft. So wonder and curiosity and trust, like they flow in both directions. But wonder can
Mhm.
also lead to judgment, and then it can't go anywhere from there. And but
Yeah,
judgment can lead to wonder, like you can get back. So I wonder if, no pun intended,
yeah.
that wonder, because those, what you just talked about was kind of a moment of wonder. Like when those things happen,
Yeah.
it to me, it is this moment of, and I think again, that curiosity of, you saying, I wonder if, like, there's a wondering element, and it's so close to, like, they're cousins, right?
Yeah.
And they can lead to moments of wonder. So
Yeah.
it's such a fascinating, like, again, my daughter, when she was home for the holidays, we were geeking out because she's working on her psychology degree to get her bachelor's. So
Okay.
we were digging into Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the shadow and all that stuff. But one thing she said to me, and I've never taken a psych class once, and she said, I think it was a psych class that she learned this in, but it was like, philosophy was psychology before psychology was psychology. And then they learned that because that's all they had. They didn't have the science. They had like the just human nature and human behavior, what they saw. And those people that were the philosophers were looking at folks and going, this is interesting. I wonder what, and they would, so if you're looking at things like the Stoics or the, let's use those as an example, but, the philosophers would ultimately, philosophy kind of, it didn't give way to psychology, but in an era where, hard data and science and like, I need proof. Here's some proof. Back to the Mel Robbins thing, you could argue that there's proof that getting up early is like, but there's also proof that it may not be the best for everybody. And it just depends on which story you want to tell. Right. And so all of this, like, as I'm, I'm writing down things like the Judgment Journal and like this weird flywheel, but it's not, it's kind of a flywheel because you've got judgment in there that can kind of throw a wrench in things. Not always, but it gets me thinking about this, which of course is exactly what I want people to do when they listen to this, is exactly what I want to. I want to get curious about it. I want to go, is there ways to go deeper? And then to your point earlier on, when is it time to let go? When is it time to go, okay, this is as far as I want to go with this. And then again, what am I going to do with it? Right.
Yeah,
and
it's okay to not care about some things.
It is absolutely. And I think that as we get older, we get better at the winnowing. We get better at the, the old Henry Cloud or David Allen rather saying, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. Or Henry Cloud saying, or Dr. Henry Cloud in Necessary Ending saying, sometimes you have to prune roses that would grow just fine so that the other ones that are left behind can flourish. And that's hard for humans to do because
it's really difficult.
We want to do the things. We are explorers. We are naturally, no matter either big or small, whatever.
I think I read in a book somewhere sometime that saying no is saying yes to other things.
Yes. Yes. By the way, are you curious about Tim Ferriss's new book that's coming out? Have you heard about it?
No, I have not heard about this new book.
Tim Ferriss is writing a new book, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't know all the details, but it's called The No Book. And he's releasing it, I believe, chapter by chapter, almost episodically. So the way he's doing it, and I think this is, again, an interesting way to approach books for the book publishing industry. The book industry is changing. Reading is changing, right? We're seeing more books that are shorter. Like For You is a short book, the one you wrote. It's a short book.
Yeah.
We're seeing more of those.
I also released that episodically.
Yeah.
Right. I released it one bit at a time.
Exactly. We are at a point now where I believe that we are going to see more. I mean, I've got the book Atomic Habits. You can't really see it in the video here right now, but I'm reading that as part of my membership book club for the month of January. But the book prior to that was How to Live on 24 Hours a Day, which was 48 pages long. And it is dog-eared as much as Atomic Habits is. And Atomic Habits is, 4 times as long? So I'm not saying that Atomic Habits is, it is obviously a great, it's a really good book. But there are some people that will read any book and go, this could have been shorter, right? This could have been, but there's this, the idea of the industry saying, this is what we want. This is how long a nonfiction book should be. This is what, so there's these ideas of this is what, and curiosity and wonder specifically allow you to go, well, does it have to be that way? As opposed to, yep, I guess that's the way it is. Because there's people like Byung-Chul
Yeah.
Han who are writing short books. There's Derek Sivers who writes short books.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many
Yeah,
examples of that.
and they're fantastic. Yeah.
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 So
You know, and there are so many books that I picked up recently, and 50 pages in, I'm like, this should have been a blog post.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. And so on that note, we'll wrap up here because we're getting, I mean, and there's so much more we could go into. I think we should definitely dive into, we've got our subject matter set for season 2, but we can definitely allude to a lot of this stuff that we're noticing with our kids. Cause I've got 2 of them that are rapid reflections and consistent. Like, and I don't see my daughter for months at a time. So she'll come home and it'll be like, oh, you're a different person, or you've evolved, you've done this way, or you've done that way. Like she would never sit down.
Yeah.
She would sit down before to talk to me about this stuff and be interested, but you could tell that it wasn't like, she wasn't like as invested. But when we started talking about her subject matter and how it relates to the work I do, and she's going through my library going, oh, wow, let me pick up here's the Kahneman and Tversky book that he has. And here's Carol. I'm like, yeah, these are all, I have a psychology and philosophy class right in my own house if I really wanted to. So it's very interesting to kind of watch that journey. And again, I'm approaching with wonder and curiosity because if you try to approach parenting as they are at the age that my kids are at now, and I would argue even earlier on with this place of judgment, that can get really tricky. So, but I'm sure there's so much more we could get. But before we leave our next episode, I'm looking forward to, I can't remember what we're going to talk about, but while you share what you've got going on, I will look up and see what we are actually talking about next episode.
Oh, geez. What do I have going on? Tiling showers and, yeah. So, best place to find me and find my work is at patrickrhone.net. That's where I am actively. But if you want to like get to my books and all that other stuff, you go to patrickrhone.com. One's commercial and the other's my blog. And beyond that, there's the constant grind of life. I think that's all people need to know about me, right?
Well, they know where to focus to find you, because that's the topic for next month is focus. Which will give us, that'll be the next one. So
that'll be interesting.
And again, remember, every month we do this series. It's the second week of every month that we do this. So subscribe to the podcast allows you to be able to get access, not just to this series monthly, but also the weekly episodes where Patrick and I don't talk. And then the flashback episodes where I bring people from the past. So again, I encourage you to subscribe to the show. And again, if you want to get all the show notes and everything related to this podcast, just do that wherever you get your podcasts, right? So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube even. And on Spotify, you can actually comment and such. And we're going to be doing more video stuff. So you'll see more stuff on my YouTube channel associated with video, not just the audio portion. And one more thing before I let you go, don't forget that if you want to support the show, podcast sponsors, go to mikevardy.com/podcast sponsors, click on any of those links that resonate with you. And that helps keep the lights on, the hair looking good. All that fun remodeled. Yes. Because I definitely divert all those funds to kitchen remodeling. But anyway, Patrick, this has been great. Thanks to everybody for listening. Patrick, I will see you next time. Thanks so much for being here.
Sounds great, my friend. Take care.